Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Oschman. Today, I am here with Dr. Ian Thompson. He is I believe, third-generation urologist. Is that right?
Yeah.
Third-generation urologist, lives in Texas. And we met first when he was doing his training or finishing his training at Vanderbilt here in Nashville, although he then returned to Texas and has spent lots of time there since. Ian has worked in a lot of different healthcare environments. He's been in academics. He's been in hospital settings. He started his own private practice. And so it struck me that we have never done a podcast episode just kind of talking about the business of medicine. I thought Ian would be a great person to have on to talk about this because he has worked in all of these different settings. And so it's so great to have you here today. I'm excited to dive into this, Ian. Welcome to the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast, brought to you by Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, where we are on a mission to help the highest caliber physicians achieve wealth that matters. Let's just dive in. Why should doctors care about how the money moves in medicine? If you're a doctor, especially if you're hospital employed, you're getting a paycheck, why should you care about where the money comes from, how payments work, kind of this business of medicine, as I'm calling it?
Unfortunately, it's everything. And I think we're seeing the importance of knowing this more and more each year. I'm pretty involved with my health policy standpoint, advocating for payment reform and so forth for physicians. Just to start, I think a lot of the problems that you're seeing, whether it's private equity, increased number of docs going into hospital employment and everything, these are just symptoms of an underlying disease that I call, which is the erosion of the Medicare physician fee schedule. So the way doctors get paid from Medicare, which is, for those that don't know, that's what pays for those that are 65 years of age and older for the most part. And learn what Medicare, there are different kinds. A is what you get for just covers your hospital admission. You get that for just being alive. B is what covers outpatient kind of services. D is drugs, and C is the Medicare Advantage programs. When they set the what's called the conversion factor in 1992 that went in effect, you were getting paid $31 per RVU. Everything that we do in medicine is measured in RVUs. And so everything that we do has a CPT code, and every CPT code has an allocated number of RVUs. And there's some change that can change. We've seen that change here recently. And in urology, it's got the reimbursement for a lot of docs if they're in certain sort of procedures, if they tend to focus there. So it's really important to know that because of all the stuff that's going on, and you see these cuts in what's called the RUC, and that allocates a lot of the stuff, you might get a 20% pay reduction for doing the same procedure from one year to the next. So that conversion factor, so how you figure out how much you get paid from, for instance, from Medicare is you do this surgery, this CPT code has this number of units, you multiply that number of units by the conversion factor, and then that gives you the dollars that you're going to get paid. So $31 in 1992. So my thought is that if you feel like that Medicare thought that was fair to pay doctors for that amount of work, that $31 today is now $32 in change. $30.
You're kidding.
Something that, no. And now that's nominal change. Inflation adjustment, that $31 would be about $73 in change.
That's why I was shocked by that 32 and change number.
Yeah. What other business? I asked this. I've never had anybody answer this question for me. I mean, and give me an answer as an example. What other business has been cut so much or cut while your cost of doing business continues to go up? Right? So anybody knows what Buc-ee's is? That's who we're competing for staff, like for cost. You go to Buc-ee's, you start at $22 an hour here in, outside of San Antonio. Like, it's hard to even, so staffing your clinic, if you don't know what's going on market-wise, trends, inflationary pressures, then it's so important because those labor costs, the quality of your business model, I say, dictates the quality of care that you're able to render. So if you want your nursing, staff ratio in the hospital better, you need to pay to have more nurses, and the economics of it sometimes just doesn't work, whether it's in the hospital, the clinic, what have you. And the way it's set now, you can't push the cost up. The government has set it.
Right.
The
Yeah,
only
because
way,
it's all based off of that Medicare rate, right? So CMS that
correct,
sets those Medicare rates, like it's all based off of that. And so hospitals are not they don't have a reason to. There's no incentive for hospitals to say, well, we're going to pay you a premium to what Medicare pays because Medicare kind of
right,
sets the standard.
right, or Medicare coming. So that's what's causing people the erosion of the ability to stay in private practice, which, that's why you get all the burnout and
Right.
everything like that, because
That was going to be
yeah,
my question. I know RVUs is typically a hospital contract
right.
term.
That's not real medicine. I mean, that's not real business, right? So you're getting paid based on, that's a measurement of productivity and how you're getting paid
It
dollar
doesn't
for
actually
that.
have anything to do with the dollars and cents.
Right.
They've just assigned a dollar to the RVU.
Right. So they're trying to, so what's happening is that our lobbying dollars in DC pale in comparison to the insurance companies and the hospital, hospital businesses up there. And so whereas we get cut what we're getting paid, hospitals will get upward adjustments on the facility fee components of what they're getting. And so really the only way to sort of grow not the only way, but one way to grow your revenue or to even maintain standard of living for what you're doing, of what you're making, is to access revenue from facility fee components, not just what we call pro fees or professional fees, or what you get paid for. You think about the cognitive stuff that you're seeing the patient, coming with a diagnosis, making a plan, or doing something like operating. That's where you get your pro fees for those CPT codes. The technical fees that go to the hospital for doing the case of the OR, the imaging, or the clinic, radiation and urology, things like that. So the kind of two paths, you either try to get employed through a hospital, do a PSA through there, call pay, different sort of, that's one avenue. The other one is to try to pull everything, you'll see some practices try to, build a surgery center, do everything over there where they have ownership. And
they can collect those facility fees.
Those fees right that way.
Yeah.
And there are different ways to think about that. But overarching, it's a fleeing to security or safety. That's what you're seeing. And
that's happening in two different ways, right?
Yeah.
Because doctors, so I saw pre-COVID, I don't remember the source of this data, so I can't state it, but pre-COVID, it was like 40% of doctors were employed by someone. So, and that was largely hospitals at the time,
right.
Hospital, major health system, things like that. Last year, that number was north of 80% employed by someone. And I mean, so I think you're saying that there's kind of this flight to safety here, but I took that to say, I mean, the biggest driver, I think, is just how heavily private equity has been interested in healthcare and how quickly they've been buying medical practices over the past few years. And so they've kind of been able to swoop in. They've had the capital to take advantage of this, doctors wanting to have someone else running the business. Now we're also starting to see the side of that where maybe private equity doesn't really know how to run healthcare practices. And so unfortunately, those experiences for doctors have not always been positive. But I mean, what are those things that doctors can control, or how can they be thinking about kind of the future of medicine when it comes to their autonomy in both patient care and then in their own lives?
We built our firm around one goal: helping physicians achieve wealth that matters. Time with your family, freedom in your schedule, and confidence in your decisions. Not sure how you're doing today? Head to vestiaadvisors.com/DEO, that's DEO for Doctor's Eyes Only, to take our 3-minute physician wealth checkup and get a snapshot of where you stand today and what to do next.
So to go back to the private equity, so cheap, I've told you this, but cheap money makes stupid or bad decisions, right? The risk is, your underwriting risk is not necessary. And you've seen the effects of that in the multifamily space, people building off and underwriting on a bridge debt and stuff and moving into this. Same thing with private equity is like thinking that, why would, in my opinion, because you're just trying to roll. So for those private equity is try to come up with a platform, roll in, at least in medicine, roll in grow your revenue, grow your total EBITDA, which is just like your bottom line net income. And then the larger you get your EBITDA, then you're able to sell and flip it for a larger multiple. That's the underlying idea. But in my question is, why would you go into a business where you're getting cut, statutorily within the congressional, like the way it's written for Medicare, and by the way, Medicare patients for urology, they consume approximately 65-66% is what's estimated of urology services. So you're heavily weighted in Medicare. And you know that the way the legislation is written, that it has to cut you every year. That's the way the Medicare legislation is written. Because if there's a $20 million differential within expected costs going forward and revenues or expected costs, they have to cut that conversion factor.
Mm-hmm.
I would never go buy a business. I would not go take out debt and leverage up to go buy that I know next year is going to get paid less for doing the same amount of work. So the only way you can grow revenue or maintain revenue, see more patients, do more surgeries, do higher value surgeries, whether or not that's the right thing to do. We see some of this stuff being done out there. And that's just not good medicine. So the quality of the care that you deliver is predicated on the quality of your business model, I say. And so if you can find a way to stay independent as long as possible and have control of how that money's made, overhead is the enemy of quality. Overhead is the enemy for if anything. Andrew Carnegie said, mind your costs, gentlemen, mind your costs. And that's really important for this as any other business is, do more with less. And that's going to give you, more runway and more sustainability.
Right. That's a challenge in healthcare because you're taking care of people. So the doing more with less, we talked about this. If you listen to the episode we did on locums, doctors got into this most doctors that I talked to did not become a doctor to make great money. They do, in most cases, make great money, but they got into medicine to take great care of people and to provide access to care. Like everyone has a story of a reason that they wanted to become a doctor when they grew up. And it's probably not to cram 10 more patients into the clinic schedule for the day.
Yeah.
Or to make sure that they find more ways for intervention, because that's ultimately that's not the reason they got into it.
There's this false sense of security that, I've got this W-2 job for the hospital or with this large private equity firm. Let me tell you, running the locums companies, I hear every story out. Not every story, but I hear a lot of stories. And there's no safety or security with any of that. That happens, and I'm talking really good doctors. So it's not like, I'm the best doctor, I do this surgery the best. No, the guys that come in by where there's a hospital administrator or a private equity, CFO company, they don't know you. They don't know what you do on a regular. They maybe do, but they don't know. And so as much control as you can maintain, and that's where the loss of autonomy is really what's driving all this burnout.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing that I observe that a lot of those, like the kind of disconnected decision makers in hospitals will make is they'll make a financial decision to let go of a really high revenue generator, a very productive doctor, surgeon, thinking that they can go replace that doctor with someone who's fresh out of training who they can pay less. And that I've never seen that actually work when you look at the productivity. Even you said, you were like, there's a lot that you learn in your first few years as a surgeon that is really valuable. And so that wisdom that comes with experience, with making those decisions that, those high stakes decisions that need to be made in the moment, you can actually be more efficient with that experience. And so it's not a 1-for-1 trade, I think, the way that the spreadsheets would suggest it could be.
Right. No, I would invest in a 45 to 55, 60-year-old urologist over a new one and pay the premium. And they don't, and it's very, again, I mentioned before, like the time horizon and timing of decisions. A lot of people make very myopic decisions, publicly traded companies. You saw the president come out recently and say, hey, I don't think we should do quarterly earnings or quarterly, because, a publicly traded company doesn't have the liberty to sort of invest with a long-term horizon.
Those earnings.
Right. Same thing with hospital CEOs a lot of times. They're there for their 2 or 3 years and they're trying to do what they're going to do in that period of time before there's a lot of movement in a lot of systems. And so, but we as doctors have a different investment horizon. We, as a practice, as a business, we're, finding a home, good schools, put our kids there. We want to be there 20, 30 years in the community a lot of times. That's typical, right? And so, being able to set yourself up to where you have sort of sustainability.
How can doctors advocate for themselves thinking about this and knowing that, so many of the data points that you pulled out that, me talking about how many doctors are employed and all of that, I think there is a lot of allure in that, but then, you kind of said, well, pierce the veil, there's not a lot of safety back there. So how can doctors advocate for themselves? How can they feel hopeful about where things are going in the future?
I think getting involved is really important, and you got to find a way to put doctors back in control of, you hear people talking about the doctor-patient relationship. I think it's going to be really important to be able to develop sort of economic, viability long-term for medicine.
It's hard to believe that this is the state that, and here's what I'll say. I mean, I've been involved in the finances of physicians for 15 years now, and there is kind of this pendulum that swings because doctors find their way to the situations that allow them to do the work that they want to do. And so, I mean, even just what you're doing with your Urology Locums company, there's opportunity for a doctor to be in a situation that is not serving them or their patients well, and to say, you know what, I'm going to take a beat and I'm going to go to these places that need care, and I can deliver that care, and I'm going to get paid well for that. And then I'll find my way back to quote the system in a way that serves me and patients better when I can figure out what that is. And so I think I trust that will come out of this state that we're in right now. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I don't know what thoughts you have on that. But I mean, there are ways that doctors can navigate this. It's not easy, but there are ways.
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about this, and just kind of where my next startup, and hopefully I have enough energy and everything else to get to and time to solve for it. But I think it's really needing to dissociate how we pay and consume for healthcare away from employment. That's a whole nother reason. I mean, just to know that's just tied to World War II era, wage controls and everything. And that's why 53% of our people in the United States get their health insurance through their employer.
Mm-hmm.
Really misaligned incentives, just so that if you don't know this already, that insurance companies can only make 15% profit off the premiums. So they're incentivized if they want to make more money year over year, and that's what businesses want to do. They have to actually grow the cost of healthcare. So the way they negotiate, they're actually
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. Go through the slide decks and everything on that. But it's
wow.
But so they're incentivized. That's why every business, you talk to a CFO, what's your biggest cost? It's healthcare premiums going. I was at dinner with a COO of a VC firm last night, and he's like 28% bump in their premium, next year is what they've been quoting.
Yeah.
That's not big. I mean, that's what they expect. And it's like, why? And it doesn't matter if and that's because, and you can have a great production rate and you make more widgets, more profitable that way, but these healthcare premiums can erode any of that. So it's really, and it's the only sort of business where the consumer doesn't really know what they're buying or how they're consuming. So I think the solution is
you can't really price things out before you're actually getting the care, or you've already consumed it. You can't price shop, you can't price match, you can't negotiate. In a lot of cases, it's really challenging. And you're right, there's not another business that works that way.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that I'm working on, and being able to, you're seeing it already evolve in the primary care space. Direct primary care is really growing. I feel like I just signed up with one earlier this year, actually. And the economics of that for primary care is that doctor can make more money taking care, on average, I say 300 patients a year, and they could taking care of 3,000 patients a year in the traditional insurance and Medicare model.
Wow.
And those 300 patients are getting unlimited access
better care.
To that.
Yeah.
Right? That doc?
Well,
that's a systems issue. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of those health insurance policies, while those premiums are getting higher, the deductibles are also a lot higher. And so as a patient, your out-of-pocket cost to sign up for a direct primary care model might not actually change that much, because you're already paying so much out of pocket anyway, in addition to paying those insurance premiums.
Yeah, it's $100, $120 a month. That's your cable bill, and you've got access, unlimited access to primary care. So that's what people ask me for primary care. In my community, a lot of the good primary cares are just exiting traditional insurance models and going into these DPC. But it's $7,000, $8,000. I think it's $8,000 this year, the max for individual, 16 or 17 for the family. Federal Reserve data says 40% of households in the United States cannot afford an unexpected $400 bill.
Right.
So that means 40% of people in this, and high deductible plan is anything more than $1,500 is I think what they consider as a high deductible plan. So you have all these people, what I call, that are functionally uninsured. They have a card in their wallet that says they have insurance, but they come to get their kidney stone treated in an elective case, and they say, oh, we need that $5,000 up front. And they don't have that. And they're told, I've had these stories, oh, I'm not getting my surgery. They told me I need to sell my motorcycle to come get my surgery, things like that. And so there's so part of my, would like to inject liquidity to the healthcare market to improve access. Those are people that you can get back to work. So the plumber that's making $80,000 to $100,000 a year doesn't have good access a lot of times, even though may have insurance or doesn't even have the ability to buy. So that's a whole nother thing. So where the opportunity to really innovate is doctors taking the lead, understanding the value of the service they provide, aligning with from a professional standpoint, aligning with or owning the technical components. Unfortunately, the government has kind of outlawed, everything's in favor of the insurance companies. They can come, Optum can employ tens of thousands they're the largest employer of physicians, and they can own the hospitals.
Yes.
But we can't as
Which is,
physicians.
if you don't know that's shocking to know that it is a health insurance company that is the biggest employer of physicians in America.
Vertical integration. And reason why is that it comes back to that 15% profit rule. But the way that it's a shell game, they then buy all these subsidiaries, and then that costs, and they can sort of make money off that way. So then they
yeah. So you can, when we talked about private equity getting into healthcare, the mandate, I'll say, of private equity is to get a return within 3 to 7 years. So they're supposed to optimize that business and then sell it to someone else in 3 to 7 years to get that return and move on to the next thing. There are situations, because it's hard to optimize profit margins in healthcare for reasons we already talked about, where the only willing buyer is Optum.
Right.
Yes.
Until you've seen their stock price or United Healthcare or whatever. The other thing is read the Wall Street Journal reporting on their billing practices and everything. No doctor would still be in business if we did what they've done as far as upcoding and upcharging and stuff. So that's a whole nother, talking about Medicare Advantage plans and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you do think now there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of problems to work out. There's also a lot of opportunity. I've heard doctors doing very interesting things with big data, with AI, there's so many tools that give, I think, doctors more opportunity to innovate as well than they have had before, even on limited time. And so I think we can, like I said, we can see a shift because, the base of all of this is that healthcare doesn't exist without doctors. And so I think there is this element of, again, doctors didn't get into it to run businesses for the most part. Doctors didn't get into it to burn themselves out either. They got into it to take good care of people. And so I think the more that doctors can understand their value, the more that they can advocate for that inside of these health systems, the more that they can. One of the benefits I think we have as a company working with 600 physicians is that we've seen a lot of different ways that doctors have worked through problems. And so being able to say, what about trying this? So that you can get what you want out of life, so that you can get what you want out of your career. I think there is a way where we come back to more physician ownership and autonomy of healthcare, but it is going to take leaning in to make that happen.
No, I agree. And just dream what's possible and just push for it. And people may not, work with the people that say, we haven't done it that way, but let's see if it works. And, it's not just employment. It's not just private practice. You can do PSAs and negotiate on behalf, try to be a business and independent as much as possible. And
talk with other doctors, because again, there are doctors out there. You mentioned direct primary care. There are doctors out there that are innovating in interesting ways with their practice setups that are doing different things. And so I would also, it's easier to connect than ever, whether your platform of choice is LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. Reach out to those doctors who are doing interesting things, because I am almost certain that they would rather do it with another group than do it alone. And they would love to help others along where they've found some success or seen some opportunity, or where they are able to improve care, improve their autonomy, things like that. And so that connection, I think, is going to be really valuable too, because it's going to take some strength in numbers.
No, I agree. And those people are willing to, if they've done it, they're always happy to.
You're one of those people.
I was one of those people. And I owe a lot to somebody that said, when I, started my private practice, was so helpful gave me some books they had read when they did theirs the year beforehand, showed me the books and said like, and just gave me the courage to move forward and say like, I can always go get that regular job, but let me go try to do this. If he can do it, I think I can do it, and I, Dr. Jackson, he's a hand surgeon here in San Antonio. So I owe a lot to him, for helping that and pay it forward. And a lot of people do. And so when everybody has urology or not urology, some other specialty, those questions come up. Happy to, find me on LinkedIn and have those conversations and point you and connect you.
Yeah, I remember having that conversation with a doctor that I was working with, and he was looking at making a big career move. And I said, worst case, you just go back to a hospital employed urologist position.
Yeah.
It ended up working out very well for him. But I think that's really good framing, because I think not getting business finance training as part of medical education can make these things seem really big and scary. And so knowing there are doctors doing it, there are people that will help show you the way. And if it doesn't work, we have great need for doctors. You are employable, and you can go back to doing that.
Yeah. If you figured out renal physiology and the amazing complexity of that, you can figure out anything in business. But of course, the same thing with, I was like, in real estate stuff, you're smart enough, you can, and just having that confidence. But I'm hopeful, but it's going to take people to get involved. And hopefully, and then hopefully people listening, and the innovation is at risk at any time. Just for instance, I'll just throw this out there on, the end of this month, we're losing the ability to do telehealth visits with our Medicare patients. So those flexibilities. Yeah. So you think about those people that now can see me without having to drive 5 hours. Now I'll have to drive 5 hours for a 10-minute visit to go over lab results or imaging, things like that. So we need folks in Congress. We need our patients and our stakeholders communicating with them and driving the policy. My fear is that what's going to happen is going to become this binary decision, because this is what happens. You either have to opt out of Medicare or insurances with their rates and stuff, and go cash to be able to be sustainable.
Awesome. Any parting thoughts on this topic? I feel like we covered a lot. This was maybe the least planned episode we've done on this show. But I like where we went. This is good conversation, good food for thought. If there are doctors listening that would like to come have some of these conversations, let me know. I would love to have them. Let Ian know. He would love to have them. Any parting thoughts for anyone who's listening?
Just always be curious. And just learn, just go find people. When it comes to the business of medicine, spend time with the CFO of a hospital, CFO of a practice, business managers, operations people, all that kind of stuff. Find the things that aren't working and be part of the solution. So
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, thanks so much, Ian. It was great to talk to you as always.
Same here. Thanks.
Are you looking to hire a financial advisor with physician-specific expertise? At Vestia, we work exclusively with doctors, helping you navigate things like student loan repayment, reviewing RVU-based contracts, navigating practice buy-ins or private equity offers, optimizing retirement plans, designing tax-smart investment strategies, and planning for things like parental leave or early retirement. We have over 150 years of combined experience working with specialized physicians. So chances are, if you're thinking about it, we've helped another doctor through it. We built our firm around one goal: helping physicians achieve wealth that matters. Planning that's not just about numbers, but about designing the life you actually want to live. That means your wealth lets you live the life you imagined when you first started this journey. Time with your family, freedom in your schedule, and confidence in your decisions. Not sure how you're doing today? Head to vestiaadvisors.com/DEO, that's DEO for Doctor's Eyes Only, to take our 3-minute physician wealth checkup and get a snapshot of where you stand today and what to do next. Thank you for listening to the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. We hope today's conversation advanced your journey to wealth that matters. Please make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our amazing episodes we have coming up. See you next time. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Vestia Advisors, LLC. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or tax advice and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified attorney or tax advisor. This information is not an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Before investing, you should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses associated with investment products. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Diversification and asset allocation do not ensure a profit or guarantee against loss. Consult your financial professional before making any investments. Investment advisory services offered through Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, and Vestia Advisors LLC. Securities offered through Osdale Financial Partners, Inc., 5187 Utica Ridge Road, Davenport, Iowa, 52807. Member, FINRA, SIPC. Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, Vestia Advisors LLC, and Osdale Financial Partners, Inc. are independently owned and operated.